So what I wanted to ask you really, and this sort of key focus I feel for this Kundalini Rebels chat is, where do you see the meeting of Kundalini Yoga and Tantra?
Oh gosh, there's a complete and total overlap in my seeing. But one thing I just want to say, I think you know this, but just to be clear, is because of everything that's been going on with the revelations about Yogi Bhajan and so on and so forth, at the moment, and probably definitely, I'm not sure, but I'm not teaching Kundalini Yoga. So I am now teaching what I'm calling Shakti Yoga, which is my own synthesis of all of those things that I have practiced and known and loved for, in total, 17 years. But anyway, so just want to be clear about that. The overlap, which is why it called to me so much, is that Tantra is it's about the unification of polarities, and it's specifically about the unification of what in Tantra is identified as masculine and feminine. And so Kundalini Yoga for me was always that, exactly that. It was the awakening of the Kundalini energy and the movement of the body and the flowing of that energy, at the same time as practicing a constant meditative awareness. So the two were meeting in the practice. So for me, it was Tantra, pure Tantra, just not because people think, a lot of people think Tantra is about having sex, which it's not. I get a bit annoyed about that at this point. But you can practice tantric meditation with a partner, but really it's about the inner marriage of those two aspects, pure meditative consciousness and energy, or the manifest form of all of life. That's it. And so
Thank you. It feels really delicious actually to connect with another sister who understands that and lives that, because for me, Kundalini Yoga and Yogi Bhajan aside for now, has always been tantric to me also. And it's the feeling of that movement within. Kundalini is sexual energy. Kundalini, it's of the feminine. It's that natural creative force that wants to emerge through you. It's like life. It's allowing life to, what I say, make love through you.
Yeah.
And for me, there was a part missing, which was like the real connection of the body, a deeper layer of connection of the body, which in Kundalini Yoga and what I found in many spiritual practices, religions, etc., is a sort of bypass of the physical touch, which again doesn't have to be really sexual, like you say. But when I started exploring Tantra through, most of my explorations have been with ISTA, the International School of Temple Art.
Yeah.
It's like my holding and that understanding of what was missing, but the bringing together of these two parts really kind of slotted into place, which is so delicious. And I still see in the Kundalini world, I know that you're not saying you teach that, but the word that's coming to me is resistance to it, or a fear almost.
Right. Yeah, I think, and especially actually now knowing what's come to light, I think that it makes sense in terms of basically Kundalini Yoga is a practice that was still very much informed and overlaid with the moral compass of quite a conservative culture and patriarchal worldview. And so the two were kind of mixed. you know, there is a very that there can be a puritanical element to the teachings on sexuality and relating in Kundalini Yoga. At the same time as I've taken a lot of wisdom and truth from some of the teachings also, so I'm not dismissing everything. But you know, we just have to be aware, as with everything, that there is that wisdom or information or knowledge or the way something is taught is going to be informed by the culture from which that teacher originates. You know, and it wasn't really questioned. I remember really, when I was doing my teacher training, actually, I remember really having a huge resistance come up when the wisdom was imparted that for a woman, when she has sex with somebody, the imprint of her lover stays in her auric field for 7 years. And so I was like, what? So there was resistance because I was enjoying my sexuality at the time and playing a lot and having many experiences. So of course, I felt judged and shamed. And like it was one rule for men, one rule for women. So that was partly what, but also there wasn't really the field to have that conversation with a man or a woman who actually understood that our sexuality and our desire can be a route to awakening, not just in that inner way, but also actually in an outer express way. So, and that was the missing piece. That's what also I was searching for in my own life and my own expression at the time. And you know, that's where the Tantra kind of partly filled the gap, but also not entirely. So it's like I've had to go through the experiences that I've had and the research that I've done to finally begin to kind of find the truth that sits right with me. Taken a while.
Yeah, I love that you ended with that, finding the truth that sits with you. And really, in Kundalini Yoga, a mantra that's often repeated is the Satnam, is truth is your identity. And yet there's this sort of follow the leader element that always confused me, actually. And what I see now, and what I've been, I guess, carefully moving through, is this truth in me that knows that there's more, that knows that the feminine Shakti wants to move and evolve and change with the times, like you say, the culture, and this sort of strong patriarchal traditions that the practice is shared through, and which in some respects are so important to be upheld, yet the controlling of the energy that then wants to move through that. And so I just wanted to share that, and maybe we can go on to now what feels like the liberation of the practice, in some respects, as I don't necessarily want to talk about Yogi Bhajan. Like in some ways, I think let him rest in peace, and let's see where we can move forward. And I wanted to ask you, so you now share your own form with the Kundalini Yoga teachings, I presume, and maybe you can express more about that. But yeah, maybe a challenging question is, why didn't you do that before?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't feel any. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And actually that speaks to, I love that question, because it speaks to so much about my personal journey, and I think something that will apply to all women who are on this path. Well, yeah, because I work with women, I speak to them, but actually to everyone. So for me, initially, even though there were triggers, right from the start of like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? very initially, like in my teacher training, I was probably afraid to speak out and question and have everyone turn and look at me to be the one who was questioning everything, if I'm honest. So I didn't have the courage right at the very start to voice all of my questions. So there was some sense of like I would be morally less if I questioned. And somehow buying into the belief that because I've always had this spiritual yearning, right? And again, I think this is what brought me to the path, and I'm sure many of us, like this longing for God. And so that yearning, that longing was so strong, and I held the belief again that I have to submit to certain things that don't make sense or I don't understand, for that longing to be fulfilled. And the deference to those I perceived as being more evolved or more awake than me. So all of those reasons, which are now just at this point, I mean, and I remember being asked to do a meditation and asking one of my teachers, like, why are we doing this? What? And he just said, you just have to do it. And again, part of me was just like, no, I need to know why. But I did do it. So I had to, like he was telling me, submit and just do the practice and experience it. So there is some wisdom in the need for self-discipline and self-commitment. But then, you know, in my own lived experience, I eventually, a few years ago, ended up in an abusive relationship. And coming out of that, I had to then question everything about my deference to male authority and the ways in which I overrode my own truth and my own knowing and my own intuition repeatedly. I think there is a very strong, so this is personal, but it's also general. There is still a very strong conditioning to look up to authority and for the belief to be held in the collective consciousness that authority looks masculine and looks a certain way. You know, so often I've spoken truths which have come from within and really had not, you know, it hasn't been heard. And then a man will say the same thing and everyone listens and bows. And I'm like, this is strange. But anyway, this is a personal process. We all have to go through this process. We all have to go through it in some way. So where I am now is the only truth is that which resonates in my whole body with a yes. And I will never override that ever again. And the only authority in this life is this inner authority.
Oh, Sat Nam, sister. Thank you. I appreciate the honesty with which you share from. I recognize the courage it takes to be vulnerable and to share your offerings from a place of your truth. It's a place that I come from, and I know that it takes courage. And I honor that in you. And as you were talking then, I could feel my fire, like for the feminine that is rising. She so is. And in this very moment, I feel it. I keep waking up with this, like my offering is my activism. And with the controversy surrounding Yogi Bhajan, to me that was exciting because it felt liberating. It was like, finally. Yeah. And it's like regardless of who it is, it's like knocking down the pedestal. You know? And like you shared, I went through my own journey, and Yes, in Kundalini Yoga. I remember, I guess maybe I've been a bit more outspoken. And I even went to my teacher, I'm like, oh, I've been working with this mix. I'm calling it Tantric Flow. It's a mix of Kundalini and Vinyasa. And I'm really excited about it. And to be met with this, have you checked in with your ego? I was like, whoa. And I did after that. I was like, oh gosh, because I really looked up to these people who taught me so much. And again, was like, okay, but I did check in. I was like, no, it works for me. I like this movement. It
Right.
That's why I share it. And then going forward with the release of my Kundalini Yoga book and the journey that took me on, I shared a post recently about it, like, oh, how stiff it was. It was like you have to get every little position absolutely right. But, a mudra where you put your hands on your chest, move them because you don't want to bring it anywhere near your breasts. Heaven forbid.
And this is the disconnect. Sorry, because now I'm just like, this is the disconnect that allows the abuse to happen, right? That is where it happens. The minute you judge the body as being shameful, you are judging and disconnecting from your lower chakras yourself, and you are not in touch. That split is what Tantra heals. Okay, so your body, I know you know this, but I'm just fired up. Like, your body is holy, sacred, beautiful, divine. Your desire is divine, right? And it's the lack of integration with that creates the space in which the abuse can happen.
My whole body, all my skin is tingling. Yes. Oh, I can feel spirit just infused with that.
Come down in. No escaping out. Come down in and integrate with. Like, feel the discomfort of your desire. Feel the power and the potency of your sexual energy in your balls, in your cock, in your cunt. Feel it. That is a power. Now, don't run away from it, right? Don't run away from it. Feel it fully. This does not mean you have to act on it, but it's when it goes into the shadows that all the dysfunction comes out. So similarly, in Kundalini practice, sometimes the movements that we learn, right? The spinal flex, Sufi grind, these are sensual. They're delicious. If I was in a Tantra class, I would be making sounds of enjoyment and pleasure as my energy rises up into my heart, right? And through into my field. But because it's a Kundalini Yoga class, I have to sit there with a straight face and pretend I'm not feeling anything. My genitals are getting juicy. And that's good. It's great. It's wonderful. Let's not pretend it's not happening. And the irony is, you can stop me because I've gone off on one. The irony is that is Shakti. And it's like, they wanted to tame her. You can't tame her. She cannot be tamed. She cannot be claimed. She cannot be controlled. And actually, I just want to refer to one of the beautiful books that sort of really helped me is this book, Yoni Shakti by Uma Dinsmore-Tully, which is a feminist review of yoga. It's like, she cannot be tamed and claimed and controlled. And it's almost like a lot of yoga was devised by men to try and acquire the spiritual gifts that women naturally have.
Yeah, for me, thank you. I feel like, it feels great to have that, like, the force of the feminine coming within both of us. Like, yes, it's a yes, it's a yes. Let's rise and support each other and others to do so. And I'm careful, and maybe, just to say, for me, I don't see it as a problem with men necessarily. And I know the past, the patriarchy, the masculine, has with the if we can go back a bit, and you said about yoga, like this, trying to structure, trying to manage masses of people, if you like, and that's where kind of structure comes in, the masculine, and it helps, it actually supports. Like, structure to me gives me freedom, but it's when the masculine and feminine are working together in that. And you know, yoga as a mirror of society in some ways. It's like the yogis initially, I see it as, it was Tantra. It was like moving energy. Oh, this works. And then if I package that and say, like, this position does this position does that, other people can do it. And that is how our culture and our world has evolved in that way, with too much structure. So we've lost our freedom in the over structure of the masculine, if you like. So, like, work with me with this. Like,
I get that. That totally makes sense. It's like, I see this happening. I see this energy. I see this. Like, how does that happen? Oh, if I do this, that makes it happen. So now everyone do this, right? So that does make sense.
And so, continuing with this idea of like the yoga now, it's almost become too structured. Like, a lot of yoga practices, aside from Kundalini, it's almost military. You know, you follow this, it helps you to relax, it brings the body and mind together. And then there's another layer, which is freeing that energy, which Kundalini looks to. And then there's another layer with that, with the Tantra, it brings it back to the body, to the feminine.
Yeah.
If we look at yoga in that vein, it's almost like, I hope, and really I'm working towards that being part of our culture. And I really wanted to bring up this idea of where we're at the moment, because it feels prevalent to me, and it's in my fire, is this, what I feel is the masculine, the immature masculine running riot in the world, you know, and our civil liberties are almost being stripped back more and more. And my feminine is like feeling this, wanting to be free. And whilst I see my activism as my work that I share, unification of the masculine and feminine, what more do you think we can do as the people? Where do you feel this coming through in the world? Big question, I know, but it's there.
Big question. Okay. So this kind of links to what you said, or what we were saying before, and I think it also begins to answer that question, because there's two things that are strong with me. Again, the thing about, so, no, three things. So basically, just people who watch this, masculine doesn't mean men, right? Because I know a lot of people, when we say masculine and feminine, they hear men, women, and they think we're getting down on men. Not true. Patriarchy is a belief system that is so much a part of a collective consciousness, mainstream media culture, that and belief systems, it's affected men and women, negative and positive, right? So just to make that clear, there is still this, and it kind of goes back to what I said before, this learned submission. It's learned, it's taught. We're born free, we're born wild. And there is a learned submission that happens in education, in parenting, in the way we're indoctrinated through the media. So what I said before about becoming my own authority, we all have to make that initiation into becoming our own authority. And I see this so clearly because I've been teaching for so long. And there's just this natural, or it's not natural, there's this unnatural, there's this programmed desire for me to tell you the truth, and for me to be right, and for me to give you all the instructions. And I've always taught from a place of wanting to elicit your wisdom and empower you, right? And that hasn't always fitted with what people want, but that's what I want to offer, is like, I want you to become the teacher of me and the teacher of others. I don't want you to stay beholden to me as the one who's telling you what the truth is, but that indoctrination is very strong. So it's like, first of all, to find that authority for yourself. The second thing is the body. It's like, how I've got to this place is through making the journey in my own body. So I can now say, well, this feels true in my body because I know it in my body. So someone else can't say to me, make this movement, because my body will say, no, that does not feel right for me. So everyone, and again, it's a journey down. It's a journey of integration to the body, to the emotions, to the heart, to the sexuality. So this is all reclaimed. It's a reclaiming of the feminine, so that not so that the feminine dominates and controls, but it's just a rebalancing that every woman and man needs to do, and to take this out of the shadows. Honesty, like this, again, it's such a strong programming to go through life with a veil over the eyes. But I think the gift of this time is like, the veils come off, even if it's just flickered off for 5 seconds, or maybe for days, maybe for weeks. There's been an opportunity to stop and see and to feel. And like, my biggest prayer would be, if that may well be just uncomfortable, to suddenly stop and see what's really happening and what you're really feeling. And my biggest prayer would be, don't try and run away from it. Be with it, trust it, because in a way that is the feminine trying to speak to you, and she hasn't been heard for so long, and she really, really wants to be heard now. And it's about that listening within is actually what's going to save the planet. And if you don't listen and just go back to the way things were, it doesn't look so good, you know. I mean, I'm not holding that vision. I'm holding a very different vision, but it's like, I can just feel it in my heart. And she's like, listen to the softness, listen with compassion, listen to your feelings, feel your feelings. It's okay. This softening is needed, this opening is needed, because then you'll actually be able to feel the grief of what is happening to our planet. And when you're able to feel the grief and the compassion in your heart, you won't be able to go back to the way it was before.
Yeah, I feel touched by your share there. And I do feel the grief, and I feel my fire of that feminine that is rising like a phoenix from almost the ashes. You know, we still have that fire, we still have life able to blossom. And what's coming to me, and you can share again your truth in reflection to this. Yes, I feel yes, let's all feel what's in the body, feel what we're feeling, feel what's moving. And that's one step. There's another step that has been annoying me. And this is a lot of the community going, it's all love, accept, you know, come back to your truth. And it's fucking bypass. Like, whew.
Okay.
Anyone who doesn't like swearing, but it gets me fired up, because the feminine, yes, she's compassionate, yes, she's the mother, but also there's the dark feminine that says, no, we do not accept this, no. And this is one question that came up in another group I'm in, and I honor everybody who shares. It's not to say one is right and one is wrong. Sharing from my place. Oof, I can feel it again in me. Like what I perceive as the dark masculine is running riot in the world. And yes, we need to return to the feminine. And I don't know how this looks, but we need to feel, and then from that place bring our activism, in a place that really has a strong no and does not just allow, I'm using wheel of consent here, but yeah, just to bring in a little Kali energy, a little bit of Morrigan, you know, that meets that dark masculine, like masculine and feminine in the full pan Kali force, like head to head, where we have to come into this sort of truce. Like I can feel that almost like the dark feminine and dark masculine like this, you know, because neither is greater than the other, but they both need to rise. And then when they come together, is that like almost like the hands come into prayer. the feeling that's moving through me.
Yeah. What do I want to say about that power? Well, I totally hear you on that, and I think again there can be a misconception when we talk about love that, like you said, that it means everything's okay, you know. But yes, the love of Kali that I've known her in my life and in my body. In fact, I did one of the first Shakti yoga classes I taught was with the energy of Kali, and one of the women who took the class that very week used that energy in a situation in her life to stand strong, and she said all it took was one look, and the person that she was interacting with didn't even dare speak. So that is the power of the feminine. That is utterly unflinching in cutting through bullshit. That is completely intolerant of any excuses, any untruth, any running away and trying to hide, because she sees it all and she very clearly just says no. And again, this energy is available to men and women. This is not just something that women may access. Anyone can access this clarity.
I'm reminded as I stuck my tongue out then to sort of meet Kali, the dark feminine, is like,
yes.
Of the story of how Kali stuck her tongue out. And this is like to me, it's a tantric teaching, you know, when I share mantra, I invite people to imagine that their lips are like the yoni, the feminine genitalia, and tongue is like the lingam.
Yes.
Women get in touch with their inner masculine. It's similar to this element of Kali sticking her tongue out, because then it's like you're really sat on your throne in yourself. And the idea was that Kali was awakened, from what I remember, to fight the demons. And
yes.
she kept going. She couldn't stop until Shiva sat there with his big erect lingam and just invited her to sit on him, you know. And Shiva being the pure masculine consciousness within her, invited her to remember literally her masculine holding force. And as she sat on his huge erect lingam, because she's a full force dark feminine, to meet the dark masculine also just like it's that. And again, to me it feels that unification of the two forces coming together, and it feels so delicious. And it's the place that I share from, and thank you for riffing with me there, because again, it's that kind of, there's this element that can go missing because we're so used to this idea of love and light, but
right,
has the darkness also. It has to. That's how the light gets in, you know.
Yeah, and also it's really it can be really useful there to talk about the shadow that can come in when again, speaking from the female perspective, when women have felt so oppressed for so long, and or when there is a rage against something, against a perceived injustice, it can be so easy and tempting to just, you know, right? And that can tip over into mindless aggression, mindless violence, endless destruction. So that can be a shadow aspect of Kali expression. So when she's not also aligned with that Shiva essence, then that's what can tip her over into just.
I call it learning to ride the dragon.
Right.
So you've got your sword, like the masculine, like, and when you're very like, he's there, he's holding, you can fully let go without this fear, which I feel is there, of going into lunacy, of hysteria, which women were, it was ingrained in us. And even as children in the patriarchal world we live in, don't cry, don't fall apart, you know, don't express your emotions, contain, contain, contain. So to then even make a sound that's not invited, if you like, is looked upon. I've had it now, it's like I'm always sounding my yoga classes. I'm like, and I can feel people like, whoa, it's like, it helps with my energy, you know. But it's like learning to bring those two together. And really, this is where empowerment comes in. So we had, to bring this through, that I opened it up for a few questions, and one woman asked is like, how does the masculine support the feminine and vice versa, which we've touched on, but perhaps we can bring that into the structure of the masculine, and you can
How does the masculine support the feminine
and vice versa?
Well, at the deepest level, my experience. So first, for me, this was an intellectual knowing, and now it's sort of become an embodied knowing. Is that the masculine is that absolute stillness, you know? But I didn't really know that as a truth. I would say it and kind of get close to it in different ways. Getting closer to it, but now it seems to have really landed, is that pure stillness. You know, I can tap into it right now as I'm speaking to you. It's always there. It's like this column of stillness which runs through me, which is always there. So whatever comes, I'm anchored and able to meet in myself or from the outer world. I've been teaching around this very month, actually, in my Awakening Shakti course. It's all about this, because we start accessing stillness. As I tell the ladies on my course, so much stuff is going to come up as we go through the journey of this awakening process, that first learn to anchor yourself in stillness so you can meet whatever arises, because otherwise the old pattern is to blame the other and to blame the outside world, rather than to meet whatever is arising here and integrate it. So that requires an ongoing practice of stillness to develop that relationship of deeper awareness or deeper truth or deeper stillness. That's what it takes. So that's the ultimate, and of course then sort of coming down into sort of more manifest realms, the masculine, you know, look, the Lingam goes forward, takes directed action, has a clear purpose, is able to analyze, as you said, give structure to things. So this is all very helpful. Otherwise, there would be, like, one of my teachers, Shakti Sundari, used to say to me, otherwise we'd all just be on the couch eating chocolate all day. And also, you know, what she said once in a workshop where I was present, to a woman who was completely getting lost in her emotion and her emotional response to something. She said, "Where's your masculine?" And it was like, it seemed a bit cruel at the time, but actually there's a truth in that. It's like, where's your masculine? Are you holding yourself right now? Don't look for him to hold you. Here, come back here.
Yeah, what I'm reminded of then is our conversation at the beginning where we talked about putting teachers on pedestals, and that might be a man or a woman actually, but it's that external authority or presence or holding force that we externalize the masculine, and almost like our world has been emasculated, the people have been emasculated because we've been told to follow orders from the external. And the more we can come into that, I use the word, and I love stillness, I use the word presence. So stay absolutely present with yourself, with oneself, in body, where am I holding, in mind, where are my thoughts going, in action. For me, that's why I wear a turban or why I cover my head, because it helps me to stay present. And I've been on a massive journey with that. It's a whole other conversation, but by being present, then I can feel what's moving, how the feminine wants to move through me, what my energy is doing. And that then helps me to honor myself. So it's like, especially as a woman, where there are days where it's, I don't want to be seen so much. I need to go within. I need to feel, to move through the power of the womb. And this is not just for myself. It's for my ancestors, for the collective, for the world. Like, in all of our wombs as women, we feel the pain of everything that's moving on the earth. And I don't say that lightly. Like, now, in this time of stillness, we have the opportunity to feel even more and to move that pain. And by anchoring, as you said, and we can anchor in our pelvis, where the masculine and feminine can meet, and be present in ourselves, use our masculine, we can harness that masculine to allow ourselves to feel and to more. And to me, this is where the masculine and feminine can really work together for humanity.
Exactly. That's it. That's the unification. That's the healing. It's simply that. I mean, in its simplest, from my perspective anyway, it's simply meeting whatever arises. And again, we've not been taught this, we've not been shown it. There's every possible distraction, addiction, way out of feeling, of allowing, of accepting, of being. And so it takes a little bit of, it can take some courage, it can take some persistence initially, but that's the practice. Meet yourself, meet yourself, meet yourself, meet yourself. And, you know, again, that's what will give rise to the inner authority. Nobody else knows, really. You're the only one who can know for yourself. And the knowing that comes then is not from up here. It's not from up here at all. It's from a much deeper, stiller place. And of course, you know, like I can even notice as I say that, like there's this avoidance that wants to happen. So, oh, do I have to take responsibility? Do I have to? Yeah.
It makes me, another question that we came through, it says, I think it was, the person asked, at what stage do you become tantric queens? Because I said in my share, I was just like, it's really exciting to meet another Kundalini tantric queen. And actually, it's a great question. And I'll let you answer, but also I want to share too. When a woman steps into her sovereignty as a queen of her own kingdom, then she's able to share her magic, share her wealth, her abundance. Like then you really become, you are able to choose. It doesn't come from a place of a need or from a place of giving to get or any of that. Then actually you are a tantric queen. And it's not that you're a queen over anybody else. That you're a queen of your own kingdom, queendom, sovereignty.
I like that. Yeah. That's interesting. I've never thought about myself in that way. Just tapping in. I guess it really does come back again. I think this is what the theme is apparently today. Is it's when that there's this I can identify within myself a shift that happened in the claiming of my inner authority, which did not come from a reactive, immature place of which again we all carry, the immature girl who's reacting against her father or against the patriarchy, because I carried that for a long time. It's great because it helped me, so nothing wrong with that. That's what propelled me into this path, actually. So thank you for that, but it is that moment of shifting to claiming that and believing it and knowing that it's not for me. It simply is what is, and it's for the all. Another theme that's come through more recently for me is how can I serve, but like sincerely, not like as a spiritual act. Like when I meditate and tune in and go to my guides, then I ask, like, how can I serve? And it's a fine line, isn't it? Because I am so conscious of the fine line between standing in truth, authority, and power, and actually it's the most humble place to be, because there can be this association with ego or power trip or something. But actually, my experience anyway is like it's very humble. I'm very humble. That place is very humble. But it's also something that I think is felt.
Beautiful reflection there. Yeah. I'm feeling this the stillness that you come back to often. I'm enjoying this flow of your feminine and then this stillness. It's like it's a little dance that I enjoy. And I feel like, that kind of nicely brings us back to the beginning when we talked about the unification of Kundalini Yoga and Tantra. And having that daily practice, that real spiritual discipline that connects us to that stillness and to our truth, which is why Kundalini Yoga works so well. It awakens Shakti. It brings us back to our truth. It gives us that discipline, that structure that we need. And then from there, certainly for myself, I share from a place like, what then wants to emerge? And can you set it free? Rather than the containment or follow the leader, actually, let's use this practice to set ourselves and each other free. And because it's in freedom then that we find real truth and real growth.
I love that. Yeah, liberation. It's a liberation of the soul. The liberation, pure freedom, pure oneness, because it's the same, actually. Just in the liberation, there is oneness. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yes. And for me, I'm careful to remember that the soul is anchored in our bodies, and that the real temple that we've been seeking externally, or we've been taught to pray at externally, is the body.
Yeah.
Beautiful temple that we all reside within.
Yes. I hope to that. Yeah.
So I feel complete for now. I realize there's so much more we could go on. Yeah, thank you so much for jumping on and riffing with me. It's been a real treat. And yeah, do you have anything you'd like to conclude with?
Again, just got to go into that still place. Well, first of all, thank you, because I've really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed it. Something about don't wait to be given permission to show up fully as you. Don't, like, no one's gonna suddenly give you permission. Don't wait, don't ask, just show up as you, because the world really, really needs you to show up fully now. You know, no time to lose now.
Ah, delicious. I've got this image of us all, like our bodies as medicine vials almost. And we all have our medicine to share that comes from our soul through these bodies. And the more we can share and share with others, the more this medicine starts being passed around, the more like we just enjoy life more and more and more.
Yeah, this is what it's meant to be, you know. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, sister. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, my love. Thank you. Lots of love.